I forgot to start this recording, so I'm just going to go through just the first couple that we've gone through. So number 1 is C, number 2 is A, and we skipped number 3. Oops. So we already went, and the main memory in the computer does B, which is transfer data. Okay, so how do you write a comment in HTML? We do text here, and then of course Word is trying to be smarter than me. There, it's trying to convert things. Okay, what meta tag do we normally use in our HTML? So basically, we do the character encoding is the most important one, right? And then other things like the author, descriptions, keywords, are also things that can be put inside the meta and can be put in as meta tags. And let's see. Copy that in. Just watch out for opening and stinking word. Stop it. No, whatever. You know what I'm doing. So UTF-8. Okay. Write the tag and closing tag that surround an entire HTML document. So tags start off like that. So we all know with HTML, it's HTML. That surrounds the entire document. And then the tag that ends the body of an HTML document, we know that closing tags always have a /. Okay, write the HTML for button to invoke the function findAnswer. So for a button, you can do it 2 different ways. You can do an input type equals button. That's kind of old school. But you do have to do that for a submit button if you're going to submit a form that has a bunch of information to the server, then you have to have a submit button. But otherwise, if you're just doing this client-side calculations, then you just use an on-click or a button. So we can put button. I always find this is easier. Oops. Okay, so the HTML to invoke that function would be on click equals, and then find answer. And then we do the parentheses. You'll find out later about parameters, but this is saying this is the name of the function, and this is what I'm going to pass into it. And since there's nothing to pass into it, there's no parameters, then it's just empty. What is the ID attribute used for? It is the attribute is used to obtain a reference to the HTML element, such as a text box. Alright. what does the JavaScript function parse float do? It takes a string, and converts it to a floating number. Actually, a float type number, because that's the data type is a float. Okay, actually this probably be better on number 10. Say is used for JavaScript to obtain a reference. Okay. What type does the variable thing have after? So he's the test writer. This practice test writer. He's trying to test to see if you know your data types. So first he assigns animal to 5, and then he assigns thing to a string because we have the opening, we have the two double quotations, and then surrounding the word this, and then animal. So even though animal is a number, what JavaScript does is it converts it to a string because you're adding it, or you're concatenating it, or appending it. Those are some words that describe what's going on here with the plus. And then, so what would happen would be this 5 as a number, as a string. So it wouldn't be this plus 5 or anything like that, like as your answer. So we'd say it's a string. What value will result have? I do not know. Maybe just it probably is a word issue where the word didn't do the number list right. So that question was about what happened to questions 12 and 13. Alright, so number 15, what value will result have? Okay, this is order of operations, and so he gives us all the values of what those variables are below. And we know that order of operations is left to right, and exponents and parentheses, and then division and multiplication, then addition and subtraction. And then there's a couple more, but he's not going to throw those at you. Okay, so we know A is 3, and B is 6, and then times 5 plus negative 7. So what's going to happen first is this is going to be evaluated first because it's multiplication, and these are subtraction and addition. So currently, so that portion would be 6 times 5, which is 30. So A minus 30 and plus, which is the same thing as minus because it's a negative 7. So that's what it is right now, and then left to right, so we do this one first. So A is 3, so 3 minus 30 gives you a negative 27 plus negative 7, and that would give you negative 20. Right? No, it would not give you negative 20. It would give you, let's see, want to do the math for me? There you go, negative 34. Thank you. Okay, so that's the answer to that. And then translate the following expression into JavaScript. So he doesn't specify like the other questions that were in the Chapter 5 review, whether or not X already is declared and whether it already has a value. So we're just going to we're going to declare it first just because it doesn't say that it was already declared. So var x, we want to match. One thing about JavaScript is it's case sensitive. So if you use a capital letter in the name of your function or in the name as your variable, you have to match the case. A lot of times, like the simple ones that can be missed is like get element by ID. You need to capitalize every single letter, you need to capitalize every word in there, or else it won't work. Same thing with parse float. It's not all lowercase parse float. It's parse and then uppercase F and then the rest. So got the variable x here, and then we need to translate the middle part, and it's in parentheses, so we're gonna repeat their parentheses. So then it is a times b, and then divided by c minus d. So we want, so this will happen first, and then the division. And I'm trying to think if the subtraction will happen last. I think it has to calculate it. But for safety's sake, we are going to put parentheses around it so that it will evaluate this first, then it will evaluate that, and then it will do the division. I always kind of tend to the safe side when it comes to parentheses, because then I know for sure that it happens. And let's go do the other side then. And this is all times e, semicolon. So semicolons are optional in JavaScript. When you run it in the browser, it's not going to give you an error. That being said, and I guess it's just, I mean, I like it because I know that's the end. But it does take up space so that the browser has to read more, download a bigger file. But in this class, I want you to always use a semicolon. Okay. I have to manually grade part of it, so I just usually always go through, and I actually take the test myself and see what is correct, and I'll go through and then see if and then I also make sure that the computer graded it correctly, because there was a couple on this last quiz that the person put it in incorrectly, but the auto grader said it was okay. So yes, the auto grader is not perfect. Yes, it's kind of a pain, but it does save me some work. Rewrite the following statement so that it uses the times equal operator. So he doesn't have a var or anything in front of this, so we're just going to assume that he has it declared above. So it'd be scale times equals growth, semicolon. Because remember that what it is that when you do a times equal, it's taking this variable and timesing it by itself and the right half. Okay, rewrite the following JavaScript statement without the auto increment operator. So he's doing a pre-increment instead of a post-increment incrementer. However, this will affect things like your if you were actually using the value, because what will happen is from what I understand is that the pre-increment will actually increment the variable first and then it returns g. The other way is that it returns g first and then after it does that, then it increments g. So if you actually went and mostly that kind of thing is relevant inside of a loop, which we haven't learned loops yet. But when it comes to this converting, if the plus is after it or before it, it's still the same. So this one would be, and we're just gonna, I don't know if you're putting bar in it. I'm gonna probably rewrite this for next semester because it needs to say whether or not G has been already declared. So we're gonna say it was, and this would be the same as G. Oops. This is gonna be the same as G equals G plus 1. So that's the same. If he was asking this, then that'd still be the same answer, I believe. I was looking it up this morning because I don't ever use a pre-incrementer. I always use post once inside of my loop. So, and plus the order of operations would always return back the right thing. I mean the same answer. So like I was saying with loops is this is a loop context, and if I had that G++ in here, what would happen is that it would actually add 1 to G before it went inside the loop. If it was the opposite, it would actually keep G to be the same, and then it would add it after it once it got back up. So that's the difference. Okay. Write a defining table for a program that calculates an employee's after-tax pay. Input the employee's regular hours worked, overtime hours worked, and regular hourly wage. Overtime hours are paid 1.5 times the regular hourly wage. The employee's income is taxed at 18%. Your output is the after-tax pay. So we had this one pretty similar to our homework. And so we're going to write a defining table. Okay, input, processing, output. Okay, let's get what we're supposed to input. And he says inputs include these things. So we're going to take all those things and we're going to put it in the input. Easy enough. Okay, and then like I said in the one video, I don't know if you watched it, it was worth extra credit for your exam. And all my extra credit is extra credit for your exams because they take such a big portion. They're worth so much to your grade, and so the little homeworks and stuff, having extra credit's not going to affect your grade very much. So I always put it on the test because that's what affects your grade. And you know, it's worth 100 points, and so every little 2 points can make the difference between getting a C- and a D, you know, or a D+. Alright, so output. What does he say? Your output is after-tax pay. Pretty straightforward. Okay, this is where this middle part of the story problem is talked about. It says overtime hours are paid 1.5 times regular hourly wage, and then it's taxed at 18%. So we're going to take the inputs. So regular hours or get regular hours from text box, get overtime hours from text box, get regular hourly wage from text box. Let's see, multiply regular hours by hourly wage to get regular pay. And same thing, except on the overtime, by hourly wage by 1.5, because it's 1.5 times to get overtime pay. And you have two options on this. As I explained in the video, you can either figure out how much the tax is going to be and subtract it from the total, or you can figure out what is going to be brought home. So we're going to add regular pay and overtime pay to get the total pay, or another way to say that is gross pay, because that's what happens before you get taxed. And then we're going to take the total pay, multiply total pay by, and like I said, you can either times it by 0.18 and 0.18 to get the percentage of how much the taxes are going to cost you, and then subtract it from this total pay, or you can subtract from 100 this 18%, and that will give you the percentage of what you're going to keep or bring home. Okay, so we're actually going to do it the subtraction way. So multiply total pay by 0.18 to get taxes owed, and then subtract taxes owed from total pay to get after tax pay. That's true. I wouldn't mark you wrong on that anyway, but good point. Okay. So that's the after-tax pay. Okay. So here's the last one. And this is the one that's gonna help you with your programs that you guys are having a lot of problems with. Some of you are pretty close, and they're just like little things. And the majority, actually, I've seen are just little things, but it seems like those little things, everyone's having the little things that are causing the problems, and then it turns into this 5-hour thing. And I think my first email I said, if you, after an hour or two, you can't figure it out, then it's time to get help, which is either going to the troubleshooting board, contacting another classmate, and they'll get emails through the troubleshooting board now. They'll get a note, unless they change their notification settings where they would only get like a summary. But so they'll get a notification in your group to say, oh, I need to help somebody. So not just your group, everybody in the class will get that email saying, I need help. or you can get contact with me. Usually at night, though, I am not very available because I'm putting my children to bed. I'm spending time with them and doing a little bit of housework and things like that. So let's jump into Visual Studio. Oh, what a meanie. We shouldn't have given you these answers. We will pretend we did not see that. You are allowed to have a HTML template. Maybe I'll just email this one around so that you can have the template. So this is the template you're allowed to use when you get into the exam, and it tells us to take this processing. So first off, we're going to put our defining table above what we are going to do. So let's actually do it right here. Okay, so to comment multiple lines so that you don't have to do the single comment over and over again, this is the syntax on how to do that. So / an asterisk, and a / when you, is that forward or back? Yeah, forward. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste what my defining table is, and this is what you're supposed to do when you write your programs. And I think I didn't check to make sure everybody did it, but okay, and that's the first thing I always paste in or always write out, because that helps me to go step by step to make sure I haven't missed anything when I actually write my function. So, okay, so we need to look at exactly what inputs the, I like putting the asterisks in front of these because it makes it a nice little list. The same thing up here. We don't have to put employees. Okay, so now we got our inputs. So for every input you need a text box. And to write a text box, you put it inside of the body and use input tag, then you tell it that it's going to be a text box. And you see it in Visual Studio Code, and I thought I saw one person who wasn't using it and was using a different HTML editor, but this is called the IntelliSense. And so what it's trying to do is, as you type, it's trying to fill it in for you. Kind of like when you're using texting. When you start typing out a word, it tries to figure out what you're trying to do. So click on that, and you're allowed to use Visual Studio Code to write your program first, and then test it in the browser, and then copy it into the exam. Just don't open up another program that you've written before, one of these programs that you've written before the exam, because that's cheating. And then we give it an ID, right? And all the ID is so that when we write our function, that we can get access to this text box and what's the value that was typed inside of it. And so we need to do 3 of these. And actually, we can just copy this one and do it 3 times. And then we need to give each one of these a unique name. And so I'm just going to call this regular hours, and then overtime hours, and hourly wage. Okay, and